everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Coco and Daltz. I'm not Daltz.
I'm not Coco.
And welcome back if you're still subscribed. We appreciate it. We just took an unintended 2-ish month hiatus. Kind of didn't plan on that. So as a result of that, I don't know what episode we're on because I haven't looked at our feed in a while.
We're on episode number many.
Yes. Look at Daltz bringing the knowledge. And to celebrate episode number many, today we are going to review Marriage Story, the latest movie from Noah Baumbach that just dropped on Netflix this past week. And we watched it last night. So
We did.
Daltz, why don't you give us a summary of the movie for those who maybe have not seen it yet?
So Marriage Story is, so if anybody's seen Kramer versus Kramer, it's Kramer versus Kramer for the new age.
40 years later.
40 years later, Dustin Hoffman replaced by Adam Driver.
Your favorite.
And, we'll get into that.
Okay. Sorry to get ahead of you there, Daltz.
Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver are a couple that is getting divorced. Mm-hmm. They have a little guy who's 8 years old, 10 years old.
He was supposed to be 8, but he seemed really young. Like he couldn't read, and he seemed very young for 8 years old.
Well, he was just developmentally challenged, I think, in some ways, or maybe just on a different development scale than other kids, perhaps.
Yeah, and the movie did revolve around, obviously, custody issues resulting from the divorce.
So they're getting divorced, but there's more to it than that. So it's essentially the story of Noah Baumbach getting divorced from his real wife, who was Jennifer Jason Leigh. And so it's a story there and how they go back and forth and how they're tormented and how divorce typically works in this country.
Yeah, it's a movie about a breakup.
Which
everybody's experienced.
And it's gotten hugely great reviews. It's gotten much praise.
Many Golden Globe nominations.
Which came out yesterday.
Not for Noah Baumbach.
Not for Noah Baumbach, but for Adam Driver and for Scarlett Johansson.
And I believe the movie was also nominated for Best Movie Drama as well.
Yeah, whatever the category. The Golden Globe categories are so weird.
Like wonky.
Best Comedy and Musical in the same category.
Cats not nominated. I just want to throw that out there because Cat looks awful.
Well, because it's terrible. Why would you nominate it?
And look at the CGI. It's gross. Like, who needs like furry cat tits? Well,
and they got scary like Judi Dench faces on cat bodies, and it just scares me. That's the stuff of nightmares for sure.
I think the name of this episode, even though it has nothing to do with Marriage Story, should be Furry Cat Tits.
I'm trying to ignore that you've said that. So let's just move on.
Let's go back to Marriage Story.
Okay, so Marriage Story should be called Divorce Story. I thought it was fantastic. It was incredibly wrought with emotion and the feelings that you go through when you go through a divorce and the betrayal.
Because Daltz has been through a divorce and I have not. So
as you might be able to tell.
If you've listened to the podcast once or twice, you've maybe heard.
Divorce is not fun. I know that a lot of people, they go through it and they say, oh man, that was a lot of fun. Let's do it again. I'm here to say that it's not, and it never will be. As long as lawyers are concerned and as long as money is involved. These two things seem to be like magnets toward one another. And this was portrayed very accurately in the movie, and how the Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson originally said, let's just try to work this out between the two of us, kind of on the side. And they said it in those voices. And
I remember that.
Remember that part? Mm-hmm. And it was kind of weird. But when they started from a very good and pure place for their little guy, and they were just going to come together and say, okay, here are my assets, here are your assets, so let's go our separate ways, let's get divorced. And instead the lawyers got involved, and things just went haywire from there. One of the lawyers who represents Scarlett Johansson's character, who is Nicole, she was portrayed by Laura Dern, who was great at being an LA skeevy, fake-friendly lawyer. And she was great. And then, of course, we had Alan Alda as the schlubby discount version of a lawyer who'd been in the game for far too long and was heating his food up in Tupperware while talking to Adam Driver's character.
And telling long, unwieldy jokes with no punchline.
Right. And I could completely relate to Adam Driver standing there at the end of his rope, when the lawyer's saying, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. I said, but I've been doing all that stuff and nothing's working, and you told me to do this. And then Alan Alda's lawyer character goes into this story, an anecdote of some sort to help relate to what's happening. Adam Driver looks up at the clock as the moments are ticking away, and he has that same thing that I think of whenever a lawyer is talking. Is like, am I being charged for this story? Because I don't want to hear this story if I'm being charged for it. And that's exactly what Adam Driver says in the movie, which is fantastic.
If you're with a lawyer, I can pretty much guarantee you're getting charged.
Right.
So, yeah.
There's no free when it comes to lawyers.
Right. Totally.
And for all those lawyers out there listening, because I know we have a lot of lawyers, because we look at the demographics of our listenership.
Swedish lawyers.
Our Swedish lawyers, we have this to say to you: don't be so cruel. Anyway,
I mean, it's the profession.
And then so it accelerates from there when Adam Driver's character realizes that he's getting hosed by Laura Dern's lawyer character, and then Ray Liotta comes in.
He had originally consulted with Ray Liotta and thought he was too sharky for him.
Right.
So that was how he ended up with Alan Alda, who is a national treasure, and I love him, and he can do no wrong. And then Alan Alda was the sort of shambolic, like Dalt said, been in it too long, should have retired years ago.
Right.
Lawyer. So
well-intentioned.
Right.
Gave Adam Driver's character a hug.
Yeah. But
just not competent.
But then Adam Driver ends up eventually going back to Ray Liotta, and there's a pretty good court scene where Ray Liotta and Laura Dern are just like going at each other.
Fantastic scene.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic scene. So what did you think of the movie, Coco?
I liked it. I wasn't expecting not to like it because I'd heard so much good stuff about
Right.
it, but it is a 2-hour plus movie about a divorce, which is not...
It's not light fare.
Right, exactly. Like, it's not something that I'm going to double dip with the Avengers,
There's nobody stopping cars, from flipping over with their bare arms or anything like that either.
Right, exactly. So I knew I would probably like it. I'm surprised that it wasn't... There were definitely tense scenes and tense moments, but it wasn't as much of a downer as it potentially could have been. Like, I don't know if this was just how it played out for Noah Baumbach and Jennifer Jason Leigh, and so that's why this happened, or if he intentionally did this to not make the movie a downer, but it seemed like even though these two characters need to not be together anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and there was animosity, they were both still kind of coming from a place of, we know that we're going to be in each other's lives for a while, and
You're
there
right.
is still some kernel of like affection there.
Yeah.
So
There were some very nice, touching, intimate moments between them, which made the harsh moments more striking.
right,
Is that they still had some feelings for each other.
right, yeah. At the very beginning, when they tried to do the mediation, the mediator had them write what we like about each other, and Scarlett Johansson refused to do it.
And that's how the movie opens.
Yeah, because she thought it was corny. But at the very end of the movie, after everything was all settled, their son found what she had written and was reading it, and so Adam Driver sat down to read it with him, and it was the very end of it, which I don't believe it said at the beginning of the movie, was, I fell in love with him like 2 seconds after I first saw him, and I'm always going to love him even though we can't be together, even though I know we're not right for each other, something to that effect. And like Adam Driver starts crying, and she's in the background. It's called Marriage Story. Everybody knows it's about a divorce. Everybody knows they're not getting back together at the end and walking off into the
I
sunset.
don't think people know that by the title of Marriage Story.
No, I'm pretty sure that people know it's about a divorce. So,
Well, I think they know it's about a divorce. I don't think they know how it ends.
So anyway, so Adam Driver reads it and he starts crying, and then Scarlett Johansson's in the background and she's kind of crying a little bit too and overcome with emotion. So, and then
Now you don't have to go see the movie.
And then there is a thing where Laura Dern was able to get Scarlett Johansson 55-45 in custody, and she's like, but I don't want that. It should be equal. Like, we don't have to do that. And Laura Dern's like, forget it. You won. It's great. But at the end, she's like, hey, I know it's not your night, but why don't you take our son to dinner so I can go do this other thing? And so it could have been a whole lot worse. It could have just been full on, we hate each other and we're never going to talk to each other again. But there was, you felt a little bit better about how things were going for them than it could have been if there had been full-on hatred.
Well, what I really liked about the way that this was characterized is there was so much gray area. Like usually in a movie of this kind of subject and topic, it's black and white. It's like, I hate this person, I love this person. There was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of blending from I want you to die to
Right.
I love you and will never leave you, or you'll never leave my heart kind of thing.
Right.
And that's the way real life is. Real life is not this tidy, it's not as represented in a movie or a TV show where everybody gets through things in 22 minutes and there's a resolution at the end, like that kind of thing. And that's the way that this movie really, to me, characterized it. It was so amazingly accurate, is that they came out the other side. It's like they're divorced, but there's still all this stuff going on between them. It's not like at the end of the movie, it's like, I hate you, I'm moving to New York. It's like, well, no, this is still fluid, as to this day, probably, with Noah Baumbach and Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Well, that's why rom-coms end either at the proposal or the wedding, right? Because everybody wants to end on happily ever after, but real life is messy, and you don't
Real life
wanna,
is messy, yeah.
You don't want to see like all the BS that comes with a everyday relationship. So
Well, and that this movie is not intended to be like Friends or anything like that. I mean,
Right,
people I don't think they're expecting that kind of story, and it's tense from the beginning, and it's confusing from the beginning in terms of if you have an expectation that everybody's going to live happily ever after, or everybody's going to live separately in their silos. Like it's just, the kid has certain feelings about his dad and has certain feelings about the mother, and then those change, and then they go back, and that's the way real life is. And there's some beautiful, beautiful scenes here of that I related to with Adam Driver sort of standing at the bedroom door as his son is in talking to his to the child's mother, and they're like, and he's standing there and he wants to be understanding and he wants to give them space and he wants to give his kid what he wants, which the kid is to be with his mommy at that time. But at the same time, he's standing out there and you can tell he's hurt because the kid has spent more time with his mother. So therefore is starting to relate more to his mother and bond more with his mother and less with him. That's good for the kid. Love is never a bad thing that way, but at the same time, the kid's pulling away from him because of this whole situation, and the anger that boils over into that one fantastic scene where Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver try to work things out after the lawyer stuff gets all nasty. She comes over and tries to solve it with him one-on-one, nobody else in the room, at his cheesy bachelor apartment in the basement of some apartment building. And that scene was fantastic. That stuck with me for a long time because it starts so very nice and innocently and proper and quiet and soft, and then it just accelerates and generates into something that is I've never seen the likes of it on the movie screen in any aspect. Like, it was just so extreme. It went from so quiet to so off the charts nasty that it was beyond belief. And that's what this kind of thing can do to you. That there's no fairness in divorce. That's the way I feel about it, is no matter how fair the courts want to try to treat it and say, well, we're going to use this formula, we're going to use that formula, it's never right. It's never fair. And this movie really portrays that accurately. There's not really any winner or loser in divorce. It seems like it's just
everybody's a loser.
Everybody's a loser. Like
Right.
It's just that one of those kinds of things, and this movie really portrays that. So it was a fantastic movie. It's a very heavy, obviously, and serious topic, but it was treated very accurately. And that's what happens when you have a situation where you have an actor or a director or a writer who's gone through this kind of stuff, rather than somebody sitting back and imagining, well, what would it be like if we landed on the moon? Or what would it be like if we traveled in time?
Whitey's on the moon. Throwing it back to, was it First Man with Ryan Gosling,
Right?
which we reviewed a year ago. Go back and check it out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk about traveling in time.
Yeah.
And so I think that the authenticity of this movie was just off the charts. And that's what made it, for me, so good. It was not escapism, it was reality, but it was really good reality.
I did ask Dalt several times before we sat down to watch the movie, are you sure you're okay watching a movie about divorce? Like, are we sure we want to do this? Like, do you need a beer? Like,
Yeah, and divorce affects us all too. I mean, you're a child of divorce, right? So it's one of those topics that you don't see a lot of movies about it centering around it, but it's also,
or if you do, it's, I'm going to wash that man right out of my hair.
Right.
He cheated on me. I'm going to show him.
Right.
And, it's like rebuilding, it's one person rebuilding the life after they've been wronged or whatever,
Right. Right. And
so
the person
there's
who's
clearly a good guy, bad guy
right.
situation.
It's clearly black and white. Whereas, like I was saying earlier, this movie is not black and white. He did some cheesy things. She did some cheesy things. It depends on your perspective, who you think did the cheesier thing. Neither one of them was completely honest. Neither one of them is perfect. Neither one of them is, the fact that Noah Baumbach is sort of representing himself in this, he's portraying, Adam Driver is portraying his character. He's portraying him. And he doesn't come across as perfect in this movie. Adam Driver's character is very much a flawed character, very narcissistic, very self-absorbed. But he's also a good guy to his kid, and he's a good guy to other people. So he's a complicated guy. And the same thing with Scarlett Johansson's Nicole, is that she comes across as being somebody who sacrificed and did a lot of things for her husband and stayed home to have a family. But she also had a self-centered streak, and she also had some things that were not good about her temper and her little bit of drinking and stuff like that, like things that were blown out of proportion in the court scene, which was, we all have these little things, right? Whereas that's another thing that I thought was completely accurate, was the way that accelerated in the court. It's like, who of us has not had one or two nights where we just had a little bit too much to drink?
Right. Yeah, I think she said I can't remember which scene exactly it was, but something to the effect of, I feel like, on any given day, if somebody plopped into my life and had to observe me, like, they'd tell me that I'm a terrible mother and they'd take my kid away. And I'm like, even though I'm not a mother, I was like, yeah, that would totally happen for me, because...
That was in the scene where they started really nice, and then it went off the charts.
Oh, okay, that was the fight scene.
The fight scene, which was fantastic. So it was. She tried to be self-deprecating about it. He didn't get the joke, but the point is, like if you have, and there's the scene that sort of takes this to the next level, where they have somebody come and observe him being a dad with his son in order to judge whether he's a good dad or not, and who, like, can you imagine how horrifying that is?
And that was played for maximum, like, awkward effect,
it was,
too. That was so awesome.
And then the result of, I won't give it away what happens to Adam Driver's character in that scene, but ultimately it's just a car crash of calamities coming together there, and all realistic, like there's nothing fantastic in that situation at all. It's like, kids can be kids can be bratty sometimes, kids can surprise you with their gentleness and kindness at that particular age. So this woman just looked like she was challenged in some way, socially challenged, and happened to be like this so important person in this in the judging of this relationship that it was ironic. There was a lot of interesting interplay there, and all that stuff again seemed real. It seemed authentic, and seemed like it could happen. It was possible, even in L.A.
Real people in L.A. What?
Well, maybe, I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay.
So, what do you think about this movie in terms of stacking up against other good movies that we've seen this year?
What other movies have we seen this year?
Well, I was kind of hoping you would remember, because you have the memory.
Well, I wish you would have told me that you were going to ask me that, because then I could have maybe done some research.
We
I don't know.
never really rehearsed, so that I thought that I didn't have to ask you that.
Yeah, no. We haven't seen a whole lot of movies this year, so I don't know.
No. Okay.
All right.
So I thought it was a great movie.
Yeah, me too.
I thought it was worth going. I don't know if I would go see it again. See, that's the thing about this movie.
Well, right. Yeah, it's not something that you're going to sit through multiple times.
Yeah, and there's not multiple watches there, I don't think. I mean, the dialogue was fantastic. I thought it was very realistic. I thought the interplay between the characters was genuine and felt good. The chemistry between Adam Driver's character and Nicole, or Scarlett Johansson's mother, I thought was very interesting. Julie Haggerty played that character.
Yeah, that was interesting.
So there was a lot of good back and forth and realistic relationships, I thought. So I'm giving it a thumbs up. I'm giving it a 4.25 out of 5.
All right, awesome.
What are you giving it on your letter scale?
I'd give it B plus, A minus, right around in there.
Oh, yeah?
I thought it was really good. I thought Adam Driver did a fantastic job. Really enjoyed his performance. Scarlett Johansson did a very good job too. And I know this is. It felt like her character was like a bit more opaque than his character.
Oh, yeah.
Like, even though she did talk a lot about how she got to where, she was, how she'd given everything up, and how they'd kind of followed him around and done what he wanted to do, and she'd put, her desires on the back burner. I still kind of felt like, she didn't know who she was because they had gotten together when she was so young, and, she still didn't really kind of know who she was, know what she wanted, and she was trying to figure that out. So I felt like, whereas he was just like, no, we're a New York family, we want to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. So, I felt like she was just like a bit harder to like kind of get to figure out than he was. But as an actress, she still did a good job.
Yeah.
Like I think that was like just the character, not her performance. Like she did. I mean, in the beginning, she was just kind of not slovenly, but, she had like the mousy haircut and she didn't wear makeup. And by the end, she still had the same haircut, but she was a blonde, and now she's wearing makeup, and now she's in LA, so she's dressing a little bit better.
Right.
And, so you can kind of see that progression there. But I thought they both did fantastic jobs. The supporting cast was great. It was 2:16 runtime, but it didn't feel like it.
No.
The kid was annoying. I thought that's like my one drawback. Like the kid really annoyed me.
Well, you're not a big fan of kids in
I'm not a big
general,
fan of kids anyways. But then, like I said, like that kid, he just seemed like such a young 8. I'm like, you don't know how to read the word time, bro? Like really? Like you're 8 years old. Time is 4 letters.
But I think he was challenged. I think that was part of the issue, is he was having trouble learning to read. So I think that's why there was that level of tension there too, is that they were trying to help him learn to read because he was behind the curve, and they were trying to be patient, but they were frustrated with that too. Like that's something that as a parent, you don't want to be like, come on, you know how this goes, like you know what that word is. You have to be patient. But meanwhile, all this other stuff is swirling around. And I agree that Scarlett Johansson was very vulnerable in this. There were a lot of close-ups of her without makeup,
right,
with puffy eyes. Her hair wasn't the most complimentary style, I don't think, that she's ever had.
Right. She definitely had a Hillary haircut.
Yeah, and it was not. It wasn't. When you think Scarlett Johansson, you think of this glamorous movie star,
right?
And she was not that in this movie, but she. Like, I don't want to just talk about her looks, because her acting was really good. She was. She was raw, and as I've said many times before, is that the best acting to me is the acting that's done without talking. And she did a lot of really good acting with trying to hold her emotions in and just being frustrated, and the facial expressions and being determined and being concerned and all these sorts of things. There was a lot of that of her, more so than Adam Driver. Adam Driver was more back to the camera and his head, just a little glimpse of his head. That's kind of where he was with his emotions, that we were trying to see that he was frustrated, but you couldn't really see all of Adam Driver. For example, when he's standing by the doorway and his son has essentially said, I want to spend time with mommy and not you. Those kinds of scenes, is you sort of see him at the back and not really full on like you do with Scarlett Johansson, who is right there in the camera. And with today's camera technology and TV technology, you can tell when somebody's got makeup on and somebody doesn't. So she was very vulnerable, very raw, very great performance. And Adam Driver, I agree, was fantastic as well. Had a lot of emotion when in very small spots. So he seemed like he was very tempered and very even keel and jovial almost in certain points compared to her. But in certain aspects and certain key scenes, he's like a volcano and just erupts and just blasts out. And it was very real. It was very genuine, I thought.
Yeah, the fight scene was, for me, like really good for him. And then there's another scene like right before the very end of the movie where he sings Being Alive.
Yes. And
at first, like, he goes up and he's just kind of singing it as a joke, but then he goes back and he's like really singing it, and he's like like you said, just so like raw and vulnerable and open.
And it's him singing.
And it's really him singing.
Yeah.
And it's like I'd read like, oh, watch this, 2-minute clip of Adam Driver singing, and I was like, what?
Yeah. The guy from Star Wars.
Right. Kylo Ren is not a bratty emo villain. What? But yeah, no, I thought if I had to pick one over the other, I would pick his performance over hers.
Oh,
but
yeah?
I thought they both did a really fantastic job.
As you know, I'm not really an Adam Driver fan.
Yeah.
I have trouble identifying with him because he's not what you think of when you think of a Hollywood star.
Right.
He's got a very distinct look to him. He's very tall. He's got a very deep voice.
Yeah, he definitely looks like a character actor, not a leading man.
He looks like a guy who's, the pal of Brad Pitt in the
Right.
movie, and he comes in and goes out of the scene, that kind of thing.
He's the wacky sidekick on the sitcom.
Right, pull my finger and whoopee cushions and all that sort of stuff. But but he was great. He was fantastic. That scene to me that you mentioned about him singing, again, I agree with you, is that he played it like he was just going up and singing karaoke, and then he goes back and then he puts all this emotion in it. And then what I loved about that scene and many of the scenes in this movie is the camera stays there,
Right.
and the character kind of goes off and then comes back in, whereas the camera just stays there. So there's another scene very similar to that, where Scarlett Johansson's character is talking to Laura Dern's character when they're first getting to know each other, the lawyer-client experience.
Yeah.
And Scarlett Johansson is weepy, so she goes into the bathroom to blow her nose. So she goes into the bathroom, and the camera shows her going into the bathroom in the distance. But it doesn't cut to her in the bathroom. It just stays there, and she goes into the bathroom and she's talking. You can't see her, and then she comes back out of the bathroom. It was very interesting the way there was a lot of those kinds of scenes, the cinematography, the way it was set up. So it's not just when you think of a Netflix movie, you're thinking. I think some people still think it's like a made-for-TV movie, but it's not. You got Marriage Story, and you've got The Irishman. You've got all these movies out there that are legit movies that just happen to be. The studio is Netflix.
Right. Netflix dominated the Globe noms.
Right. And it's, I think people still have an impression that it's not as good for some reason, but these movies are just as good, if not better, as we're seeing with the nominations.
Okay, here's the thing I got to say to all the people who complain about Netflix and Amazon Prime and these places, like Spielberg complaining about it's not real, you need to go to the movies, right?
Yeah.
Like, I get it. I understand there's nothing like sitting in a theater, eating your popcorn, watching something on an 80-foot tall screen,
Right.
But if the goal is to let artists make art,
Right.
why don't we celebrate the fact that all of these places are allowing more artists to make more art?
Yep.
Like, who cares if it's...
And take chances.
Right, and take chances. Like, maybe the next Tarantino or the next Spielberg or the next Scorsese or whoever comes out of a Netflix
Yeah.
movie. Like, get over it, people.
Yeah.
The world is changing.
Well, and that's sort of an elitist opinion too, that you must see it in the theater in order to appreciate the art form. It's like, if you're going to do that, then don't charge me $15 for popcorn. Don't charge me $19 to get into a theater at prime time. Don't do all these things that are ridiculous. If you want me to come in there, be reasonably priced. Don't price me out of there, because if you price me out, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stay home because I have a TV set that's pretty much as good as a movie screen
Right.
when you're looking at the perspective of where you're sitting and everything like that.
And you can pause it and go to the bathroom
And you can
or
pause
whatever.
it, and you can go to a clean bathroom that is your own. Well, assuming your bathroom is clean, and you can get up
Is
and
that a
make your
shot?
own pop. No, it wasn't.
Is that a shot?
No, it wasn't. And you can go and get your own popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
You can order something. You can order a pizza and have it delivered if you want to. You can pause it and play it back. I love that scene. I want to see it again. So I hear what they're saying, and there's certain movies that, yes, you should see in the theater, but there's no
Right, we're going to see the Rise of Skywalker in the theater.
that there's no obligation to. It's
Right.
not like it's you must do this or else you're not being fair to the art. It's like, screw that. I can watch the art wherever I want to. I mean, if I want to watch the art on my phone,
Right.
I'm going to do that. It's my choice. So, yeah, those guys should just step off, I think.
Yeah, so we didn't intend to go there, but that was...
But this is
so
a
I'm
movie.
sorry that I detoured.
No, but this is a movie, I think, having said all that, we watched it at home, and I don't think it would be an any better experience in the theater.
Right, exactly. I don't need to see Adam Driver punch a wall on an 80-foot screen,
Right.
Like,
The guy's tall enough as it is. Imagine what he's like on a 80-foot screen.
right, totally, especially if that scene is in 3D. Like Adam Driver punching the wall in 3D.
You think Marriage Story is in 3D?
That would be
At
awesome.
the Cineplex near you?
That would be awesome.
Little Women in 3D.
Don't tempt them. Then they'll charge $25 for that.
Oh, man.
So on that note, anything else to add, Dalton?
No, I say Marriage Story, good story. Leading candidate right now for Picture of the Year, in my mind, for the Oscars. Another movie that we saw that didn't really get well represented in the Golden Globes that I also thought was going to be a good Picture of the Year was Ad Astra. I think this movie is on par with that. And it's different, completely different kind of story. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Father, son, wife, husband, dissolution of a marriage kind of thing. I don't even know if that's a word, but I said it
Dissolution.
Anyway. Dissolution, yeah. I said it in the Canadian way.
Uh-huh.
But I think that this has got to be a leading candidate. Now, I think what'll happen is, having not seen it, but just knowing how the Academy works, is that Irishman will probably get Best Picture because it's 3.5 hours long and it's made by Martin Scorsese and it's got Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci,
and Pacino.
Al Pacino in it. So it's kind of like a lock for the Best Picture, whether it's good or not. I don't know.
Martin Scorsese.
So we've got to set aside about 3 separate hours on 3 separate days to watch that movie, because there's no way we can pack in with our schedules a 3.5 hour movie.
Well, your mom is coming to visit, so maybe one day is that kind of movie your mom would like?
I don't know. I think there's probably a lot of cursing in it.
Your mom is like 85. Like, she's heard, and she grew up in Newfoundland. Like, I'm sure she's heard some cursing in her day.
I'm not sure how that's related, but
it's not like, didn't we watch Love Actually with her a couple years ago? And I forgot about like the porno scenes, like where they're rehearsing the porno. So you've got like Watson from Sherlock, like they're blocking it, and the girl's bent over in front of him, and he's like grabbing her boobs while he pretends to like, pound her from behind. And the first time that scene came up, like, you kind of looked at me and I was like, yeah, sorry, I forgot about this part.
Yeah. Let's not talk about Love Actually, because this is supposed to be a positive podcast.
But see, Love Actually, everybody ends being in love, basically, except for Emma Thompson and Alan Rickman.
So like a completely fake experience.
Well, but it's what I said you want to see. You want to see people be happy and pretend like they're going to live happily ever after, and not have all the BS that comes along with being in a relationship every day.
I think that was a shot.
No, I think that's the truth. Like, doesn't matter who it is. Like,
yeah, that's one way of looking at it.
I'm sure Prince Harry still leaves his socks on the floor, so doesn't matter.
The royal family being the
paragon of happy marriages that we need to. All right, bad example. You're right.
Yeah, hold that up.
All right. So on that note,
so go see Marriage Story, stream it on Netflix, patronize the fine arts, cinema or not. I think that's the conclusion of this podcast.
Spend your $13.81 a month on Netflix, people.
Right, and eat your own popcorn at home if you wish.
Definitely.
So that's it for. Oh, they're playing us off. It's time to go. We got to go. We're going to be playing us off at the Oscars. By the way, we didn't tell the listeners that we're going to be presenting at the Oscars, did we?
Oh, yeah, we need to tell them that.
We didn't tell them that because it's not happening.
We're going to be Mystery Science 3000 theatering it.
I'd pay to see that, actually.
We should do that.
I'd pay to see us doing it.
We would probably get sued if we did that.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap this.
We don't have enough money for that. So for another week, another episode, thanks for joining us. And thank you, dear listener, for sticking with us, waiting it out. You knew another podcast was coming, didn't you? And thanks for sticking around, because here it is.
I'm sorry that this is the one we welcomed you back with.
I'm not Coco.
I'm not Dot.